Hello, and welcome to our webinar, How to Get Any Third Party to Communicate Your Brand Consistently. I'm Abigail Norman, Content Marketing Manager here at Brandworkz, and I will be joined this afternoon by Brandworkz founder and CEO Jens Lundgaard. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we jump into the webinar, there are a few housekeeping things I wanted to mention. First of all, I've placed you all on mute so there isn't any additional background noise. If you have any questions or comments, please use the text box located in the GoToWebinar side panel, and we will get to them as soon as we can. We've allowed for time at the end for a Q&A session, but please feel free to type in a question at any time. We'd also appreciate it if you could fill out the survey on the closing screen at the end of the webinar, as we are always aiming to make our webinars better and hear your feedback. If you haven't already, please do connect with us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at BrandworkzWorld. We have a company LinkedIn page, which you can find by searching Brandworkz on LinkedIn. I'm also happy to connect with anyone attending today's webinar, so don't be shy. On Facebook, we have a company page as well that can be found by searching Brandworkz. If you're using Twitter, please do tweet at us during today's webinar with the hashtag #BrandConsistency. We love a conversation, so please do come and get involved. Again, thank you for taking the time to join us for today's webinar, which is part 2 of a 3-part webinar series. We hope you find the information useful. Today, we will be looking at how to get any third party to communicate your brand consistently. This is a challenge that through our work with many global companies, both large and small, we have come across countless times. With globalization and the digital age, we have many more channels and many more touch points than ever before to manage. There is also an increase in the people that have access to our brand. Head office has many third parties, both internally and externally, to look after, including marketers and other offices, partners, PR teams, journalists, sales teams, manufacturers, retail partners, external agencies, distributors, and the list can go on and on. I think this diagram does a good job to illustrate what happens when our third parties aren't communicating our brand consistently. Brand inconsistency from all your different channels leads to brand chaos, which ultimately leaves you with a confused consumer. By the end of this webinar, we hope we will have left you with some tips and takeaways so that you can minimize the chaos and increase your brand's consistency across all channels and touch points. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I'm going to launch the poll question, so if you could take a moment to answer that question, that would be great. How many of you attending today's webinar have experienced this problem of getting your third parties to communicate your brand consistently? The last webinar looked at aligning internal teams and creating brand ambassadors from the inside out. If you missed the last webinar or are interested in watching it again, it's available on our website, or email me at abigail.norman@brandworkz.com, and I will make sure you get a copy of the recording and the slides. Internal teams are crucial to get on board with the brand messaging, as once they are bought into the brand consistency will trickle down. It's especially important that the entire top management is bought into the brand as well. The first and most critical step into getting your third parties to communicate your brand consistently is aligning your internal teams. Our key takeaways from last time included: make each individual employee feel valued, communicate and make sure your internal employees know and understand the brand story, and finally, don't be so consumer focused that you forget about your best brand ambassadors. As marketers, I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, but sometimes it's good to have a refresher or hear someone else evangelize about the importance of brand. Brand counts for a lot more than a cool logo, pretty colors, and neat fonts. It is a key intangible business asset that is the vital driver of differentiation and sales. For example, in the 1980s, tangible assets made up 75% of company value. Today, intangible assets like brand make up 80% of company value. I think that right there is a good indication of the importance of brand. Another example comes from one of the largest brands in the world and also highlights the importance of clear, consistent brand messaging. CocaCola's brand is worth roughly 50% of the company's value. That translates to $73 billion. Coke is able to charge 112% premium for their product because of their clear, consistent brand message seen globally. Wouldn't we all love to be the Coke of our industry? A way I like to think about brand is by visualizing an iceberg. The 10% that is visible above the water is the brand messages seen by consumers, and the 90% under the water is everything that has to happen for these messages to be sent out to consumers. There is a lot more going on behind the scenes that makes it possible to deliver a clear and consistent message. 90% is bigger than 10%, but oftentimes the balance is out of sync, and we focus more on a beautiful brand and a beautiful campaign than ensuring the processes and people are in place to properly execute the campaign. It is important to focus on the 90%, which is making sure internal teams are aligned, that all your third parties have access to the correct marketing materials, everyone understands the brand story, and the overall aim of the company. It's making sure that the right marketing processes are in place to ensure that everyone is informed about what is going on. The 10% almost falls into place when the 90% is given priority. I'm now going to hand you over to Jens, who will give you tips on how to get the 90% organized and make sure all your third parties are communicating your brand consistently.
Hello to everyone and welcome. My name is Jens Lundgaard and I'm the founder and CEO here at Brandworkz. I thought I'd start by sharing 3 different client stories with you. These 3 clients all brought similar yet slightly different challenges to us before we started working with them, and I think each of these stories will help to illustrate how we've been able to make sure all of their third parties are sharing the same consistent message across all their markets. The 3 client examples we're going to share are JLL, Varian and Transitions Optical. First up is global property company Jones Lang LaSalle, or JLL as they're now called. JLL grew quickly and mainly through acquisition of smaller independent companies. They found themselves with a 45,000 person company with over 1,000 offices in 70 countries. As they were smaller independent companies, they found that each company they bought was communicating a different brand message. They knew they needed to align everyone to the same brand message, but they also needed a way to allow people to localize material and still feel that they had the autonomy they had before the acquisitions. The brand needs to be communicated consistently across all markets and to all parties. JLL gave their employees, their global offices and their third parties a one-stop shop for everything brand and marketing. This is an online environment where marketers can get everything they need to create great marketing content, from logos to imageries to fonts, templates, marketing artworks, but also ideas and inspiration and so on. Jones Lang LaSalle implemented what they call the Brand Hub for all their employees and third parties. It's a central web-based place for all of their guidelines, documents, and so forth. It's a place for everyone to log into and instantly have access to everything they need. But importantly, JL is also able to set permissions to ensure that the right people see the right information. All of the imagery and artworks are just a few clicks away. And there's also a place to showcase work from across the world to inspire other teams and also to ensure the same brand message is communicated globally. What's really important is that the Brand Hub looks and feels like JLL. Users are immersed in what JLL means, what it looks like, what it feels like from the very first entry. New content is also added frequently so that users have a reason to come back. And if you give them materials they need to do their jobs faster and more effectively, you draw people in rather than imposing brand rules on them from the head office. By implementing Brandworkz, JLL saw increased cohesion of the teams, clarity of the message and brand consistency across their offices and local markets. They saw an increase in the sharing of marketing material across markets and promoting a globally consistent brand. The Brand Hub really gave all the parties access to the correct materials every time. We realized that there are budget constraints for lots of people, and sign-off isn't always easy to get for a platform like JLL's. After I finish with the next 2 client stories, I'll give some tips on how you can potentially get budget and sign-off, but also on how you could get third parties to communicate consistently, even if you don't have an online brand platform. Next up is global medical company Varian. They make cancer proton equipment, very advanced. Varian went through a complete brand overhaul and a corporate rebrand. Their challenge was fairly similar to Jones Lang LaSalle in that they had 45 offices, 6,500 people that needed to get on the same page, so to speak. They needed a way to distribute the new corporate materials to all their staff, to their partners, and to third parties, of course. Varian wanted to ensure that their new brand was communicated consistently from the start to protect the investment they'd made in the rebrand in the first place. They also needed a way for people to localize marketing material and to control which documents and assets they were allowed to access and so on. Varian did the smart thing, we would say, by looking for a solution to these issues during the rebrand process to ensure the brand investment. What happens quite a lot is that people realize after the rebrand where really the effectiveness isn't going to be so great because you've already lost some momentum after the rebrand launch. Varian's solution was also an online cloud-based platform which gave their people access to the new brand imagery, to the logo, marketing templates, sales materials, and so forth. And crucially, they also used the brand site to educate everyone on the reason for the rebrands, why they're doing it, what they stand for, why it's important, why are they different and how are they different to the competitors. And in addition, third parties have access to dynamic marketing templates that allow for quick customization without needing the sign-off from head office, which saves a lot of time. This is a central location for everyone across the world to get access to everything Varian. They call it the brand exchange, and it's their answer to how to get their brand implemented through all third parties going forward. Varian are really seeing fantastic results. They now have control over who can access the materials through the permissions. They have peace of mind knowing that the right people have access to the right things, and they're able to localize content quickly, giving everyone some autonomy. So they have in fact reduced the number of manual requests to the marketing department head office by almost 90%. Head office staff is then able to focus on more strategic tasks as they aren't constantly sending out the same logo, same image, other marketing collateral, or beating people over the heads for growing their own material, of course. So that decentralized marketing teams are able to localize content, create brochures, update product briefs, which previously took weeks, and now they can do it in a matter of hours, with the same number of people, of course. They've seen the site pulling people together and drawing people into the brand. They wanted an army of brand ambassadors, and to be honest, that is really what they've got now. The final story we're going to share with you is from a company called Transitions Optical in Florida. It's a company that provides lenses for glasses that change the tint or the shades in the sun, so you can use it both as normal glasses and sunglasses. Their story is a little bit different to Varian and JLL's because they already had what was in fact a digital asset management system in place that was supposed to be used to share, distribute marketing content and be a central place, for everything brand and marketing. The problem was just that this wasn't working and literally no one was using it. The biggest reasons for that was that the user interface was poor and it was difficult to navigate, meaning that users basically just gave up or rebelled against it even, and would ring, the head office of marketing or the regional marketing department for what they needed. So what happened was that there was lots of duplication of content because people couldn't necessarily get the right stuff in time. They would start creating themselves. So there was both a usage of money which could have been avoided, and also the brand consistency wasn't as great as it could be, as they're across 15 different countries. To boot, head office was overloaded with requests and really needed some time freed up to ensure that they were working on something more strategic. Transitions launched what they call the Brand Asset Center, which, like the other two companies, give everyone access to the right brand assets when they need it. And crucially, it's user-friendly and easy to navigate, and I really can't stress how important that is. It's not just employees, but third parties are expecting a good user experience as well. Even though they're contracted to you, they're still going to start doing their own thing if they can't find the right ingredients from you. So as you can see, it's a visual, colorful site that draws the user into the brands, something that's very important for creative people, otherwise, again, they might rebel. And everything really is just a few clicks away. So for example, Transitions people and agencies use the site for sales toolkits. There's press agencies using it. And they don't have to hunt around for the things that belong to them. It's all organized into tabs and folders for them in a logical manner. So it's really a one-stop shop, which gives people the ability to get what they need and basically crack on with their work. Almost immediately, the Transitions head office, or the marketing department rather, have seen a really significant increase in productivity for them, but also for third parties. Everyone has what they need at their fingertips. It means they aren't always ringing head office for manual requests. So the new digital asset management site or brand site is, I think, is really beautiful, easy to use, and it draws people in. And whereas before they were in a kind of spiral, a downward spiral where people didn't have access to anything, therefore they started creating their own thing, then they needed to get that approved, that didn't get approved because they basically created it themselves. They're now back in an upward spiral where, because largely people are just modifying things that they already can easily download, therefore giving approval and reviewing stuff like that is much easier because you're already starting from a good place. And subsequently, both the local markets creating material and the head office is spending much less time creating and localizing the material. So just in cost saving, we calculated that they've saved nearly $500,000. That's not calculating the improvements they've had from the increase in the brand consistency. As you can see from these three stories, or hopefully see, there's some common themes. Autonomy is key. There's nobody that likes to feel like they're always being told what to do. We're all experienced marketers, and many of us, and indeed you, probably have degrees in marketing. So you have to give people some freedom to localize your marketing content. Chances are that when teams are given autonomy without feeling like they're being policed to create their own things, they'll keep the brand consistent. But obviously, what you have to do is you have to essentially make it easier to follow the brand. So not only is it easier, but it's also for people to do the right thing, because I think people really generally want to do the right thing, just sometimes it's just too hard. Which leads on to another common theme: self-service. Everybody's massively busy these days, especially with all the channels you have to take care of in marketing. So nobody has the time or even are able to wait for sign off on something from the headquarters. We want to be able to self-serve. We're getting more and more used to that in our home life and in our office life, and then we can use each person's judgment to decide on within certain bounds how to customize it or localize it. The longest an employee has to wait for something, or indeed an agency, to be signed off, the more frustrated they'll get, and the higher the risk is that there's going to be some homegrown material that's going to be created, which typically is less consistent but also less effective. So an easy-to-use system is a system that people want to use, in terms of the software, but also if you don't have a digital asset management solution or a brand management system, the process of getting a new asset or an existing asset must be easy to use. If it's not, again, homegrown material will start to mushroom, or out-of-date assets, of course, that might be hanging around on people's hard disks because people are simply too busy, or they have a deadline that you just can't break. So it needs to be very easy to access the marketing assets. They also need to be organized in a way that doesn't require a long search process. And if the correct materials are easily accessible, certainly the head office or any local marketing executives will really see the level of manual requests drop dramatically, because employees are able to complete most of the things themselves and within the time frames they have to do it in. So, this all helps in what Abby talked about earlier with focusing on the 90%. If you sort out what's not necessarily visible to the end user, but the underlying processes and the systems to create that, then the visible 10% has got a much, much higher likelihood of remaining consistent. As we mentioned here, a few tips on how to engage people to your brand if you don't have a brand management system or are waiting for a sign-off or a budget. First, if you do require sign-off on all new marketing pieces, make sure that there's a quick, documented, easy-to-use sign-off policy in place that people know about. If the sign-off is going to be delayed, you need to have a way of communicating that quickly so people can make plans. Let people know the time frame or when to expect the artwork to be signed off. Of course, as with anything, the longer you make somebody wait, the higher the risk that they'll go off and create something or use something that isn't really or shouldn't be approved. Homegrown material is just really the start of brand chaos. The next tip is that head office cannot expect to be the brand police all the time, possibly with the exception of financial, where there's a legal obligation. But even then, people don't like to be told what to do. The more you dictate things, instead of making it easy for them to basically have some ownership, the more rebellious they're going to get. They'll probably even start submitting things if they can get away with it for review. So you might not even get sight of things if the process is too vague or too draconian, and then the brand material and consistency will really start getting out of control. So it's really back to the fact that you need to provide people with some tools and at the very least some templates somewhere and in a way that can be distributed. And again, these days it's really hard to get away from doing that from a web-based system. As we said above, make the process of finding or requesting an asset an easy one. Don't overcomplicate things. Nobody has the time to learn complicated processes. That's certainly something we try to very hard at Brandworkz. We try to make things easy because we think that's really going to be one of the main key, or we know that it's one of the key factors for uptake of any kind of process or system. And of course, the harder it is, the more frustrated people get, and the less likely they're going to use the process, whether it's software-based or manual. Also, encourage people to reuse the current campaigns from other regions or companies. I can't think of a better way to promote a consistent brand worldwide than to use campaigns that are working well elsewhere in the world. Last tip, tell people the brand story. You may think your employees know it already, but chances are a lot of them won't. So we need to tell them again, or rather you need to tell them again, whether that's in person or through a system. But frankly, as far as I'm concerned, everybody in the whole company needs to know what the brand stories are, because everybody in the company should be a brand ambassador. No harm in over communicating the story. As mentioned earlier, some of you may or may not have the budget or the sign-off for an online brand management system. Completely understand how hard it is to get money released these days. We also understand that every marketing department has to choose wisely on how to spend the budget they're given. Thankfully, at least according to Gartner, industry analyst, that's increasing. According to them, the chief marketing officer will spend more money on software than the head of IT by 2017. So of course, you need to spend that money in a balanced way, where some of it will be on marketing execution. But if you spend all your money on marketing execution software like Hootsuite, social media marketing software, or maybe Pardot or Marketo or Eloqua on marketing automation, if there's no system behind it in marketing operations, you could call it, or brand management, it's going to be increasingly hard to feed those execution systems with great content, and then you're really sub-optimizing on all of the analytics you're probably going to be doing on that. So from where we are sitting, of course, the first thing you can do is to find out what you need to spend to implement an online sharing site, and then calculate what you think you'll save, including things like efficiency savings, reuse of assets, avoiding of fines from stock libraries, maybe if people are using out-of-date or out-of-license imagery. Lots of software vendors offer an ROI calculator, as do we. So before you jump into any purchase, request it and see what they come back with. Because clearly, no purchase anywhere really in an organization should really be happening without having a foundation for getting a return on it. And then of course they should take you through it and show exactly where you'll save money, or even better, make money. For instance, we have a white paper titled How to Build a Business Case for Brand Management, which you can download from our website, and we'll give you some more details on this topic. We're always happy to have a chat as well. One of our brand management experts can give you a call to better understand your position and make some recommendations to you. So my key takeaways are align the teams, both internally and externally. Make sure everyone in the head office is aligned, and also you need to put tools in place for all of your third parties and more remote colleagues and partners are aligned behind both the brand positioning, the messaging, and the look and feel. You have to create the brand army from the inside out. Number 2, encourage sharing of marketing material from across channels, markets, and regions. There is no better way to ensure consistency and also to avoid duplication of work, which costs money unnecessarily, than using successful campaigns globally. Number 3, provide written down guidelines and all of the necessary assets and information to the end users, and then let them go, so to speak. You have to provide some autonomy, but with guidance and with the tools to make it really easy to stay on brand. And then number 4, and I can't stress this enough, keep it simple. Make sure the process or the system is easy to use. Provide the information to the users in an organized way, and don't bombard them with information that isn't relevant to them.